Hello, I'm Darlene Michelle with Friends of Fairview, and we are a nonprofit organization here dedicated to preserving Fairview Cemetery here in New Albany, Indiana, raising money to help preserve it, all of that stuff. But then also to telling the stories, to sharing the legacies, preserving those legacies of the people buried here. And in today's little story, I want to tell you the story about the Culbertson family and introduce you, give you a tour of their family plot. William Stewart Culbertson was the one who built the Culbertson Mansion. Right here you can see it. The Culbertson Mansion is now belongs to the State Museum of Indiana, so it is now a state historic site, an Indiana state historic site. So you can tour this beautiful mansion. Yes, it is gorgeous, as you can see from the photos that I'm showing you now. So if you have never been, I do highly recommend a trip to New Albany, Indiana to tour the Culbertson Mansion State Historic Site that is here. But usually people want to come and see where are the Culbertson family buried. They want to see the Culbertson family plot. And let me show you where I am. So there I am, see? Right in front of the Culbertson family plot, right here. So this beautiful monument right here that you see is made out of granite, and it was imported or shipped here from New Hampshire in 1876. So when William Culbertson was getting this beautiful family plot all constructed, as you can see, look how gorgeous it is. It's pretty impressive, right? Now on this side over here, we have 8 people buried. So 8 of the Culbertson family buried on this side. And then over here, we have 4 people buried there. So there are 12 people here altogether. Now, while the granite monument is holding up quite well, right? Unfortunately, the headstones, which were all made out of marble, are not lasting quite so well. So a lot of the stuff has rubbed off or just worn down on the monument's headstones. And so it's kind of difficult to see what they say and who is buried, who the people are. But I know, so I can introduce you to how the people are here, introduce you to the entire family. So I did want to tell you a little bit about William Culbertson, because we're going to introduce you to 2 of his 3 wives. So William Stewart Culbertson, he had 3 wives, his first 2 wives having passed away, and then married the 3rd wife, and then he died while he was married to wife number 3. So wife number 1 was Eliza Vance Culbertson, and they had 8 children together, 4 of whom are buried here, okay? And the others are buried elsewhere, but 4 of them are buried here in this plot. And then he married his 2nd wife. We'll see, Eliza died in 1865, so they got married in 1840. She died in 1865 at the age of 42 of typhoid fever. And then 2 years later, he married his 2nd wife, Cornelia Eggleston Culbertson. She is also buried here, and they had 2 children together, one of which is buried here, the other is buried in New York. So those are the 2 wives and the children that are buried here. So he had 10 children total with his first 2 wives, and 5 of them are buried here. Now, his 3rd wife, Rebecca, when Cornelia died in 1880, 4 years later, he married Rebecca Culbertson in 1884, and she outlived William. They did not have any children together. She is buried with her family in Paris, Kentucky, so she is not here. Okay, so we'll just go get on started, and I'll introduce you to all the people that are here. I just wanted to get you familiar with some of the wives and how many children they had. So when I say with the first wife Eliza, with the 2nd wife Cornelia, you'll know who I'm talking about, right? Okay, so let's get going. Okay, so we're gonna start with our first little person here, right here. This is Eliza Culbertson, but baby Eliza Culbertson. So Eliza Culbertson died when she was just 10 months old of cholera. So she was, however, not the child of William and Eliza Culbertson. She was their granddaughter. So their first child was William Arthur Culbertson, who is actually buried in St. Paul, Minnesota, so he's not here. But this is his first child with his wife, Olive Glover Culbertson, and their little baby girl. So obviously she was named after her grandmother, Eliza, right? So this is little baby Eliza, who died in 1867 at 10 months old of cholera. And she's buried here in the Culbertson family plot. So this is William and his first wife, Eliza's. This is their granddaughter, Eliza. And there she is. Sweet little pumpkin. All right, so let's see who else is here. All right, so here I am with the next person, and we were just over here. Do you see? There's baby Eliza. Right next to baby Eliza, right here, is little baby Frances Stewart Culbertson. Now, Frances Stewart Culbertson was the daughter of William and his first wife, Eliza Culbertson, okay? So this was their daughter, Frances Stewart Culbertson. Now, Frances Stewart Culbertson, poor little baby, honey pie, she died when she was just two and a half. So she died in 1851, August of 1851, at the age of 2 and a half. Can you imagine how devastating that would be, right? To lose your little baby. So little Frances, right here. Now the Stewart is from William's mother's maiden name. And we'll meet her because she's buried here too. But that's where the Stewart comes, and you'll hear it in a lot of, the middle name of a lot of the family members, because that was William's mother's maiden name, Stewart. And we'll meet her in just a minute. But here's little Frances, child or daughter of William and his first wife, Eliza. So, and then next to her is her sister. And this is Mary Julia. Mary Julia, also child of William and his first wife, Eliza. So this is two of their daughters, William and Eliza. Remember I said there were 4 of their children, 4 of their 8 children are buried here, and this is 2 of them. So we have little Frances Stewart Culbertson and Mary Julia Culbertson. Now Mary Julia, she was 21 when she died, 2021, and she died of heart troubles. And she died in 1868, I think it was 1867. It was right shortly after he married his second wife, Cornelia. Not many months after that Mary Julia died of heart trouble. So she was 21 when she died. So here are 2 of the 4 children that William had with his first wife, Eliza. There we go. So let's see who's next to them. Alrighty, next to them, there's the 2 sisters. And next to them is their mama. So here is Eliza Vance Culbertson, right here. So this is William's first wife. Now Eliza Vance Culbertson, she was originally born in Pennsylvania, but when she was 2 weeks old, her mother died. Her father remarried and then migrated the family all the way down here to Corydon, Indiana, which is where she grew up. So really, his second wife, her father's second wife, Jane Wilson Vance, she would have been the only mother that Eliza would have known, right? She would have known her only as mother, because she was just only 2 weeks old when her biological mother died, and her mother is buried in Washington County, Pennsylvania, where Eliza was born. So here is Eliza. Now Eliza was 42 when she contracted typhoid fever. 42, typhoid fever. She died January 3, 1865, so just a few months before the end of the Civil War. So here she is. So let's see who's next to her. Alrighty, so next to Eliza, there's Eliza. Next to her we have her husband, William Stewart Culbertson, the builder and owner of the Culbertson Mansion and many other. He was the president of the First National Bank here in New Albany. He was the president of the New Albany Coke Company, Gas Light and Coke Company. He helped build the Kentucky-Indiana Railroad Bridge, the K&I Bridge. He was the main financier of that bridge. He also was the vice president of the bridge company that built it. and many, many, many other things. He died the richest man in Indiana. He was born in Pennsylvania, over by Harrisburg, he's on that area there. He was born there February 4, 1814. He died of heart troubles on June 25, 1892. So there is William Stewart Culbertson. See, there's that Stewart again, right? Because that was his mother's family name, his mother's maiden name. And so he's right next to Eliza, his first wife. He's also on the other side of him, his wife number 2. So here we have Cornelia Eggleston Culbertson, right? Now, let's go talk about her. All right, so here we are with Cornelia. Now, after the death of wife number 1, Eliza, William married Cornelia, who was from Evansville. She was originally born in New York, but her family migrated to Evansville. Her mother divorced her father and then remarried, and then that whole family, they moved to Evansville, Indiana, and that's where she grew up. And so here is Cornelia. Now, William and Cornelia married in 1867, 2 years after the death of his first wife. And then right next to Cornelia is their first son, Cornelia and William Culbertson's first son, little Walter Stewart. Walter Stewart, he was born while they were building the Culbertson Mansion. So Cornelia and William, they're the two that built the Culbertson Mansion. And while the mansion was being built and they were living in that first house over on Pearl Street, between Elm and State Street, or Elm and Spring, where the current Elks Club is. That's where William and Eliza's house was, and then Cornelia lived in that house while she was building the mansion with her husband. And then they had a little baby, Walter Stewart, a little son, who died before the mansion was completed. So he was just 8 months when he died of cholera. So there is little baby Walter, buried next to his mother. So let's look again. Let's take a little look here. So we see William buried right here in the middle of his first 2 wives. So we have Eliza here, William in the middle, Cornelia right there on the other side. On the other side of Cornelia, we have Walter Stewart, the first child of Cornelia and William Culbertson. So let's go see, who is that way over there? Do you see? We have one more person buried way over there in this row. Let's go see who that is. So I'm here with the last person buried in this row, and this is Julia Stewart Culbertson. And Julia Stewart Culbertson was William's mother. Yes. Now, William's brother and sister were also living here in New Albany. So his brother, John Culbertson, John Craighead Culbertson, and then his sister, Mary Ann Culbertson, who married Daniel Snively. So then she became Mary Ann Snively, and she's buried here too. So the siblings brought their mother from Pennsylvania, where she was living, to live here in New Albany, where they had relocated. So 4 years before Julia Stewart Culbertson died, they brought her here to New Albany. Her children brought her here to New Albany. She lived the last 4 years of her life here in New Albany, right next to her son John, on Bank Street, which is just the next street over from where William and Eliza were living. So here is Julia Stewart Culbertson. So now you know where that Stewart comes from, because that was Julia's maiden name. So William's mother was a Stewart. So Julia Stewart Culbertson. So now you see why that keeps recirculating in the middle names of a lot of the children. So Julia Stewart Culbertson. So here she is buried. So she died October 6, 1857. And then she was buried here right the next day. Buried in Fairview Cemetery right the next day. So there she is, Mama Julia. That's what I call her when I come and visit the Culbertson family. Sometimes I bring flowers, leave them at their graves. I always say hi to Mama Julia. So here she is. So as you can see behind, though, this completes this row. of 8 people on this side of the monument. See, we've got all these 8 people, but you can see over here, there's 4 more on the other side. So let's go see who's over there. Okay, so now we're on the other side of the monument. You can see there it is, and over there you can see right here, those are the people we just all talked about. So now we're on this side, and let's see who's buried here. So I am with right here, this is Joseph Simpson Culbertson. Now this is one of the sons. There's two sons over here, and they were both the sons of William and his first wife Eliza. So 2 of the other 4 children with his first wife that are buried here. So we have Joseph Simpson, and then right next to him we have Charles Stewart. So let's get down to Charles. So there's Charles. So I've got Joseph and Charles. You see him? Okay, so now Joseph over here, what's interesting about these 2 brothers is that they were born 3 years apart from each other. They died 3 years apart from each other. So they actually died at the same age, because they died 3 years apart from each other, and they were born 3 years apart from each other. They were the same age when they died. Isn't that crazy? So first Joseph. Now Joseph ended up later in his life, they were both in their 40s when they died, 41, 40 something, both young when they died. So he ended up dying of tuberculosis. Later in his life, he ended up going to a tuberculosis hospital up in the Adirondacks in New York, St. Gabriel's, and that's where he passed away. He went there to try and see if he could get healed, to heal himself, but it didn't work. So that is Joseph. Right over here we have Charles. Charles died of cirrhosis of the liver. So he had a drinking problem. But there's Charles there. Charles had a lot of issues. Just really, my heart goes out to poor Charlie here, because he just had a lot of trouble he was just a troubled person. His father was his best friend. And when his father died in 1892, Charles just never recovered from that. He grieved so deeply to the point where he even tried to commit suicide by cutting his throat. He didn't succeed. He survived that, but he ended up having a deep drinking problem and stuff. And there was just Charles, yeah, my heart goes out to the poor guy. He missed his dad. His best friend died, and he just didn't know how to cope with that. So he struggled. So there's Charles. He died in Indianapolis, where he was living at the time. But both the boys are buried here. So there we go. So we have Joseph Simpson Culbertson, Charles Stewart Culbertson, and they are on the end here, the end of the plat. Now we're gonna go closer to the road. Let's see who's next to them. Okay, so we were just over there with Joseph and Charlie, and now we're here with Samuel Wilson Vance and his wife Anna Guthrie Vance. Now, Samuel Wilson Vance was the half-brother to Eliza Culbertson, William's first wife. Okay, so she was a Vance. Now, Samuel Vance, William Vance right here, he ended up being, I think he was a lieutenant. I think he achieved lieutenant in the Civil War, fighting on the Union side. So here he is, very celebrated man, and his wife Anna. And so they're buried here in the Culbertson family plot as well. So that concludes all of the people that are buried here. So let me bring you to tell you a little bit of a history of the plot, because it got interesting. Okay, so I'm now back in front of the monument here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of history. But before we do that, we're going to just review what we learned. So remember, on this side we've got 8 people, and you remember we've got little Eliza, baby Eliza, who died of cholera, the granddaughter of William and his first wife. Then we have Frances Stewart. Next to her is her sister, Mary Julia, both 2 daughters from his first wife, Eliza. Next to them is their mama, Eliza Vance Culbertson, William's first wife. Next to her, we have William Culbertson right here in the middle. And then next to him on the other side is his second wife, Cornelia. And then next to Cornelia is William and Cornelia's first little baby, Walter Stewart, who died of cholera at 8 months. And then remember, way over there, the very last one in this row, is Mama Julia, right? William's mother, Julia Stewart Culbertson. And then over on this side, if you remember, way back here by the back of the plot, we've got Joseph Simpson Culbertson, Charles Stewart Culbertson, the two sons of William and his first wife Eliza, two of their boys. And then we have Anna Guthrie Vance, and then next to her is her husband, Samuel Wilson Vance, and Samuel was the half-brother to Eliza Vance Culbertson, William's first wife. So they're buried here, Samuel and his wife Anna. So that's who's here. Now, the interesting thing that I just recently discovered as I was working through the Fairview Cemetery record books is that the Culbertsons weren't originally this wasn't their first plot. Their first family plot was somewhere else, which is something I never knew. And having researched the Culbertson family in depth for about 3 years now, never having noticed or known or even seen that they had a different plot before this one, it makes sense. Think about it. The Fairview Cemetery, it wasn't always as big as it is now. It was smaller. And little by little, as it kept outgrowing its boundaries and its borders and they needed more space, they would acquire more land to kind of expand the cemetery. So what you see now isn't as big as it was way back when William was needing to bury the first few people. So some of the people buried here were buried in a different plot. So this plot that you see here, this beautiful plot, he didn't start creating that and putting that together until 1876. When this monument was here, is when he imported this monument, is when this plot was created. And he began putting together this lovely family plot. Prior to that, they were buried over in Range 1, Plat 5, Lot 2 and 3. So who is buried there and had to get moved over here? Well, let me tell you. They're all on this side where the 8 people are. So we've got baby Eliza. Little baby Eliza was buried over there in the original plat, over there on the other side of the cemetery, and we're going to go see it in a second. So baby Eliza was originally buried in that first Culbertson plot. Francis and Mary Julia were originally buried in that first Culbertson plot. Wife number 1, Eliza Vance Culbertson, buried in that first Culbertson plot. And then way on the end, we've got little baby Walter Stewart, the first child with his wife Cornelia, buried in the first Culbertson plot. And way on the other side, Mama Julia. These were all buried in the first Culbertson plot. 6 people were buried in the first Culbertson plot. I think that by the time, so the last person that was buried over there was Walter Stewart, who died in 1868. The first one buried there was little baby Francis, who died in 1851. So between 1851 and 1868, that's when anybody that died within that period of time in the Culbertson family was buried over on the other side of the cemetery in Range 1, Plat 5, Lot 2 and 3. Right? This is Range 9, where this is now. So this is not the original Culbertson family plot. So 6 of the people buried here on this side, I just pointed them out to you, were originally buried over there. When this lot, this family plot was constructed and created in 1876, in the cemetery burial records, it shows that then they were moved over here. So the bodies from the first plot were moved over here to this one in 1876. What? Oh my gosh. Well, let's go see where in the world was this first Culbertson family plot. Hi, Darlene here. So now we are on where the original Culbertson plot was located. So that would be Range 1 or Plat 1, Range 5, Lots 2 and 3. Okay, so let me show you in where I am in relation to where the current Culbertson plot is there. Way over there. Can you see it? can see the little arrow, and that is pointing out the current Culbertson plot. So we are in the oldest part of the cemetery. The Scribners are buried just right over there. So they're not far from the Scribners, or the original plot was not far from the Scribners. We have right here is the Sanderson Monument. That is what is on the end by the road is Sanderson. They're Plat 1, or Lot 1. Okay, so we're in Plat 1, Range 5, Lot 2 and 3. So Sandersons have Lot 1. And then the next two lots are right here. So we have Widman. This is now Widman. So we've got some Widmans buried here, but right here were some Culbertsons. Ah, yes. I remember I already told you who was here. All of those that were buried be 1968 or 1868 or before, 1851 to 1868. Now we have Widmans buried here, but it was Culbertsons. And then this is Lot 2, but they also had Lot 3. So this one next to it, which now has some Webbers buried. So we've got some Webbers here now. Widmans and Webbers. But this whole area here had 6 Culbertsons buried here at one point. And then in 1876, when William Culbertson created the original, or the second family plot, the new one, the current one, that's where they're all buried now, in 1876, then all of the bodies that were buried here in Plat 1, Row 5, or Range 5, Plots 2 and 3, or Lots 2 and 3, which are now Widmans and Webbers, right? This was the original Culbertsons, and all these Culbertson bodies got moved over to the current Culbertson plot, where they are buried now. So there you go, the original Culbertson plot. And then, like I said, in 1867, they were then all moved over to the current one, which is in Range 9, or Plat 9. And then I don't remember the lots and all of the stuff, you know? It is just over there with the big obelisk. So there you have it. The story of the Culbertson family, the story of their plots, the original plot being here, the second plot, current one, being over there, that you can see, which of course at the time, you have to think, there were 6 people buried in this here, but then there are 12 people buried over there. Think of that. So I think here they just ran out of room. He had no more room to put more people. Plus I think by that time too, he was the wealthiest, one of the wealthiest men here in New Albany. He died the richest man in Indiana, right? He wanted to create a stately family plot for himself, as what was happening all over the place with the wealthy. They were creating, it became the trend, the tradition, the trend to create a very prominent family plot that showed off how wealthy you were. And so he moved all his family over there, which there was more room. They can fit 12 there, you're not going to fit 12 here. So I think he just didn't have room, and he wanted to create a bigger, more expansive, more elaborate family plot for the Culbertson family, one of the most prominent and wealthiest families here in New Albany. So there you go. There's the story. Now, if you ever come to the Fairview Cemetery to go see the Culbertson family plot, you will know who's there. You'll know who's who. Make sure you say hello and leave a flower. I do that. I leave flowers, one little flower on everybody's grave. Remember, there's 12, so bring 12 little flowers. Okay, until the next time, I'm Darlene. Bye-bye.